Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lecture number 28 of Pakistan Studies. The topic for this lecture is Foreign Policy of Pakistan, Features and Highlights. No state can live in isolation. As individuals cannot live in isolation, they interact with each other. Similarly, states have to interact with other states that are there in the international system. They also interact with international organizations and other entities that play important role in world affairs. You interact with the international system in order to project, promote, and protect your national identity and national interests. Economic interests or economic needs or economic reasons also emphasize the need of working with other states and other actors in the international system. A large part of economic development relates with the financial and technical assistance that a country gets from outside. Similarly, issues of peace, security, and stability in the international system cannot be promoted unless different states work together, they discuss the issues, and decide about the ways and strategies to deal with the situation. Pakistan is an active and important member of the international community. It interacts with other states at different levels. One level of interaction is bilateral. Bilateral means that you interact or you deal with or you develop relations with individual countries. For example, we can talk about Pakistan's relations with Afghanistan, Pakistan's relations with Iran, and so on, so forth. So this is bilateral level. There is another level of interaction that is called multilateral level. Here, Pakistan interacts with more than one state. This interaction is generally with reference to issues. For example, issue of peace in the international system is something that has to be addressed along with a large number of other states. Multilateral also includes interaction with international organization. The third level of interaction is through the United Nations and other international organizations. Pakistan is member of the United Nations, and in addition to United Nations, Pakistan is also member of several other international or regional organizations. You act as member of these organizations within the framework, basic principles, and charter of these organizations, and work with others for achievement of the goals of these organizations, like the goals of the United Nations, goals of the Organization of Islamic Conference. So that's another level, that you function and operate within the framework of international organization and international bodies. The next level is the non-official level. In addition to official channels, government to government communication, there is also a non-official side where ordinary citizens play an important role, or various groups, various organizations play a role. For example, a lot of Pakistani students go abroad for education. They also go abroad for visit and other purposes. Pakistanis are settled abroad. They are doing job. All these people are not officials of Pakistan, but what they do and how they live, how they interact with others affects a nation's role at the international level. Similarly, there are different kind of organizations, non-governmental organizations. They also interact with similar non-governmental organization elsewhere in the world. So when you talk of Pakistan's relations with the rest of the world, we talk both of the official level and also the non-official level, where individual citizens and their groups interact with each other. Now, we will highlight some of the features of Pakistan's foreign policy. That is, within the broad outlines that I have given, we will talk about certain principles which have influenced Pakistan's foreign policy, or these are goals which Pakistan wants to achieve. So the first feature and highlight of Pakistan's foreign policy is protection of independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Pakistan. Primary concern of Pakistan, and for that matter, every state, is its security and survival. This is the key concern for Pakistan's foreign policy, that its independence, its sovereignty is protected, and Pakistan is in a position all the time to conduct its foreign policy and domestic affairs on the basis of its national interests, national goals, as defined by the leadership. Therefore, attention has to be paid to security affairs. When we talk of security, there are a couple of things that have to be kept in mind. First, for security, diplomacy is important. That you interact with other states, you develop relations with other states, and you try to deal with issue through peaceful means, through negotiations, by opening different channels of communication. So diplomacy is essential to security of a country. We also need, for security, strong military. A strong military, trained professional military, equipped military is important. Although problems and issues should be resolved peacefully through diplomatic means, but there are situations when non-peaceful methods are resorted to. or sometime some other state may impose aggression on you, then you need strong military to deal with the situation. Along with that, you also need security arrangements to deal with the conditions. In addition to military, you need all kinds of security arrangements. An integral part of a security system is national mobilization. You mobilize people, you involve people in the defense and security of the country. Because modern warfare is not limited to the border areas or to particular or specific battlefields. When modern war breaks out, all parts of the country become battlefield, because you use air force, you use now countries can use missiles, and there are so many other ways. Therefore, a perfect defense requires that the military must enjoy the support of the nation as a whole. If nation as a whole stands up to the security challenge, only then you could meet with threats to security, to sovereignty of your country. Pakistan's relations and problems with India have greatly influenced Pakistan's foreign policy options and security issues. But we will talk about Pakistan's relations with India later on. The second feature of Pakistan's foreign policy is relations with all states. Pakistan maintains relations with all kinds of states, irrespective of the type of political system these states are adopting. That's not Pakistan's concern. So Pakistan has maintained relations with all kinds of states, and relations at the international level are maintained on the basis of common interests. What you need is certain areas of common interests. Those commonalities of interests are basis of good relations. So if you have more commonalities, if there are more interests common between Pakistan and another country, relation would improve. Another thing that influences relationship is that the relationship must provide some benefits, some rewards to both sides. Relationship cannot be a one-way traffic. If Pakistan has relations, say, with some country, let's say if Pakistan has relations with Iran, then that relationship must be viewed by the both government as serving their interests. So the basic criteria for Pakistan's relationship with other countries is that there must be common areas identified to work together, and this relationship must be of use and benefit to both countries. Another consideration which influences Pakistan's relations is non-interference in each other's internal affairs. Pakistan will not interfere and does not interfere in the internal domestic affairs of all the states with which it has relationship. Similarly, Pakistan will not like other states interfering in its domestic or internal affairs. And then another related principle is problems should be resolved peacefully, amicably, and through negotiations, so that the problems are either resolved or kept within manageable limits. Here, we can briefly mention about Pakistan's relations with the major powers to have an idea of the fact that Pakistan conducts relationships with different and diverse types of countries. First, let's say a few words about Pakistan's relations with the United States. Generally, Pakistan has maintained cordial and smooth relations with the United States. However, there have been problems from time to time, and there are issues on which Pakistan and United States do not see eye to eye. But despite differences, they still work together. For example, some areas of difference are nuclear policy. This is an area where Pakistan and US have differences. And there are certain other issues on which both sides have reservations. However, there are common grounds. There are shared areas on the basis of which Pakistan has maintained smooth relationship with the United States. Next example would be that of China. Since the 60s, China has been a reliable and trustworthy friend of Pakistan. And despite the fact that Pakistan and China have different domestic political systems, their domestic priorities are different, but still they maintain very close cooperation and interaction. China has provided effective and consistent economic assistance to Pakistan. China has contributed to Pakistan's industrial development. And in this connection, it is important to mention that China has also made significant contribution to Pakistan's defense industry. And China extends support to Pakistan on diplomatic forums, and on Kashmir, Chinese policy is sympathetic to Pakistan's position and emphasizes the need of peaceful resolution of the disputes which Pakistan has with India. With Soviet Union and now Russia, Pakistan and Russia, and before 1991, the Soviet Union had and continue to have now a working relationship. But there have been frequent problems, and within the South Asian context, Russian preference has always been for India, and Russia's policy towards Kashmir has ranged from India to neutrality. Despite these kind of differences, Russia and Pakistan have stable relationship. They regularly interact and try to expand the areas of common interest. Economic relations exist between Russia and Pakistan, economic assistance and trade, and Russia has helped Pakistan from time to time for oil exploration. The steel mill near Karachi was set up by former Soviet Union, or you could say Russia. So what we have seen here is that Pakistan has maintained relations with different kind of countries on the basis of sovereign equality, mutuality of interest, shared goals, and considerations which give benefit and rewards to both sides. The third important feature of Pakistan's foreign policy relates to economic issues, trade, and investment. These issues were important all the time, even in the past. But now, for the last 10 years, economic issues, trade and investment have gained a lot of prominence in foreign policies of all countries, and Pakistan also pursues that objective. For that purpose, Pakistan deals with other countries and also with several international financial institutions in order to obtain economic assistance for its development projects, to obtain loans which Pakistan gets from international financial institutions and also from the states. International financial institutions may be mentioned as the World Bank, IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank. The issue of trade, that is Pakistani goods going abroad, is also important. Then investment. Pakistan has been striving hard for attracting international investment for different kind of industrial and other projects in the country. Because if you obtain international financial support and investment, it speeds up the process of industrialization and economic development. Issue of transfer of technology to Pakistan, favorable terms of trade, that the trade is done in a manner that it provides advantage to Pakistan, and also humanitarian assistance. Sometimes there are natural calamities in Pakistan, and these calamities are also there in rest of the world. So Pakistan extends humanitarian, economic assistance, technical assistance to other countries when they face problems, like earthquake, floods, or anything. Similarly, when Pakistan is confronted with this kind of problem, Pakistan seeks assistance from abroad. The fourth feature of Pakistan's foreign policy is Pakistan's relations with the Muslim states. Pakistan attaches great importance to developing relations and ties with the Muslim states. It is one of the basic principles of Pakistan's foreign policy. But we are not going to talk in detail about this relationship at this stage. The next lecture is totally devoted to this aspect, that is Pakistan's relations with the Muslim countries. So there we will deal with this issue in great detail. The next principle of Pakistan's foreign policy is solidarity with the developing countries. Pakistan is a developing country trying to develop itself in all fields of life, in industry, in economic development, in other areas. And there are a lot of other developing countries. And Pakistan has always cooperated with the developing countries so that they can work together for dealing with the problems of underdevelopment and poverty. In fact, if you examine and study the social, economic, cultural problems of states of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, you will find a lot of common problems. Problem of underdevelopment, poverty, and illiteracy. Then you have civil strifes, interstate wars, human migrations, and refugees. These are the issues which are common in varying degree in the developing world. So Pakistan works at two levels to deal with this kind of issue. One, Pakistan raises these kind of issues or the problems of the developing countries at the international forums like United Nations and other forums, and urges the industrialized and developed countries to contribute to solving these problems in the developing world. Because if more than half of humanity is suffering because of poverty, because of underdevelopment, because of sickness, civil strife, and for so many other reasons, you can't have peace in the international system. Stable peace is possible if globe as a whole prospers and develops. The disparities that exist in the international system are reduced. So that's one level where Pakistan works for other developing countries. The second level is when Pakistan urges other developing countries to collaborate with each other. That is cooperation amongst the developing countries. They can help each other. They can cooperate with each other for addressing the problems that I have highlighted. Since problems are common or similar. Therefore, one can learn from each other's experience. You could also transfer technology from one developing country to the other developing country. I give you an example. In Pakistan, literacy rate is low. But there are developing countries where literacy rate is very high. Take the example of Sri Lanka, a neighboring state of Pakistan. In Sri Lanka, the literacy rate is over 90%. Therefore, Pakistan can learn from their experience how they have dealt with this problem, and then Pakistan can also adopt some of the methods suitable to our conditions to raise literacy. Similarly, Pakistan can help other countries in the areas where Pakistan has made progress. So the emphasis is that for improving the situation in the developing world, you do not simply look towards the developed or industrialized world. You also make your own effort. You also take certain steps to deal with the situation. Next feature of Pakistan's foreign policy relates to Pakistan's membership with United Nations and other international bodies. Pakistan joined the United Nations as a new member on 30th of September 1947. And since then, Pakistan has been an active member of this international body. One Pakistani served as the President of the United Nations General Assembly. And Pakistan has been non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for 6 times. And the latest membership of Security Council is for the year 203 and 2004. So Pakistan is currently non-permanent member of Security Council for 2 years. In addition to United Nations, Pakistan is member of other international bodies. And within United Nations, Pakistan has been active in different specialized agencies and organs of the United Nations. An important role played by Pakistan relates to peacekeeping operations of the United Nations. United Nations sends its forces to different countries and different regions for peacekeeping and peace promotion where conflict exists. Now, United Nations doesn't have its own forces. So when a peacekeeping operation has to be done in some area, then United Nations gets forces, military forces, and other officials from its members. And Pakistan has been contributing its army, police personnel, and others for UN peacekeeping operations. Even today, Pakistani troops and other officials are serving under United Nations in several countries. which helps to build Pakistan's image at the international level. The next feature of Pakistan's foreign policy is Pakistan's support to anti-colonialism and opposition to racial discrimination that existed in the past, and sometime even nowadays it manifests in certain parts of the world. As we all know, Pakistan became independent in August 1947. And after that, Pakistan was very active in the process of decolonization, that is, freedom or liberation of other countries. And Pakistan played an important role in promoting the process of decolonization. There were also instances of racial discrimination in the world. For example, Rhodesia suffered from apartheid or racial discrimination, where white minority was ruling the majority, that was black population, by force. And Pakistan was part of the global effort to end this kind of injustice. And ultimately, Rhodesia became an independent state with majority rule under the name of Zimbabwe. We can also talk about South Africa, where similar problem existed. Namibia, another case of racial discrimination. So in all three major instances, ultimately, majority rule was established, and Pakistan supported the UN efforts to promote the principle of equality and opposed racial discrimination. Pakistan also supports a right of self-determination for the people and areas whose political future is not yet settled. It's not merely in Kashmir that Pakistan supports right of self-determination. Pakistan supports the Palestinian cause, their national right, their freedom. Pakistan had also supported very strongly Algeria's freedom movement, because that was another case of right of self-determination. In Afghanistan, when Soviet troops marched in December 1979 and occupied Afghanistan, Pakistan's opposition to Soviet occupation and Pakistan's support to Afghan Mujahideen resistance to Soviet forces was part of its commitment to self-determination and the presence of foreign troops in a country. The next principle of foreign policy is arms control. Pakistan is not in favor of spread of weapons and arms in the international system, because it diverts resources to non-development purposes. And if weapons and arms proliferate, there is a danger of war and conflict. Therefore, Pakistan has joined global efforts to control weapons, and that control at the superpower level as well as at other levels. Arms race in the international system in the past existed at the superpower level. I am talking about the period before 1991, when the Soviet Union and the United States were competing. So there was an arms race between them. But there are several other arms races in different regions, in the Middle East, in South Asia, in East Asia. Therefore, Pakistan's argument has been that arms race should be discouraged not only at the superpower level, but also at other levels, at the regional levels. And Pakistan has also emphasized that the best way to deal with arms proliferation is to address the issues, the causes, the factors that contribute to arms race, the factors that lead a country to obtain weapons and to engage in wars, conflicts, and similar actions. The next feature of Pakistan's foreign policy relates to the nuclear policy. Pakistan has been a great champion and supporter of peaceful uses of nuclear technology. Although Pakistan was able to acquire nuclear weapon manufacturing capability in the mid-80s, but Pakistan avoided making weapons. Pakistan was of the view that this technology should primarily be used for economic development and for betterment of people, rather than for making weapons. Pakistan exploded nuclear devices in May 1998 in response to India's nuclear explosions. India's nuclear explosions had created strategic imbalance in the region. Pakistan decided to rectify, remove that imbalance, and therefore, towards the end of May 1998, Pakistan also exploded nuclear devices. So had India not exploded nuclear devices, Pakistan would not have gone for that strategy. Even after exploding nuclear devices, Pakistan talks about nuclear restraint regime in this region, that India and Pakistan should get together and agree on basic principles for two things: control of conventional weaponry and also containment of nuclear weapon proliferation. There are other principles which are important for Pakistan's foreign policy, which Pakistan emphasizes from time to time. One important area pertains to Pakistan's relations with India. Pakistan's relations with India have generally been troubled. There are periods when you could say that relations with India were normal, relatively smooth. But if you take the average and aggregate of the relationship from 47 to the present. Unfortunately, distrust, conflict, and exchange of tough statements, accusations, counter-accusations have been the features. Pakistan and India went to war 3 times, 1947-48, 1965, and 1971. Then there have been limited wars, and there is always exchange of fire on the line of control in Kashmir. This relationship has been a major concern for Pakistan, has built security pressures. In year 2002, India mobilized its troops on the Pakistan border. Although by the end of the year, most of these troops were withdrawn, but even in year 2003, there were problems in the relationship. And despite Pakistan's effort to open negotiations for dialogue on problems and disputes, India was not forthcoming. Another feature pertains to Pakistan's policy on Kashmir. In fact, Kashmir has been the major bone of contention between Pakistan and India. Pakistani position on Kashmir is that this is a disputed territory and its future should be determined in accordance with the resolutions of the United Nations passed in 1948 and 49, which call for a plebiscite, a fair and free plebiscite, to be held in Kashmir so that the people of Kashmir decide their political future. Despite Pakistan's efforts, India doesn't want to hold plebiscite there. The last important feature of Pakistan's foreign policy is control of terrorism. Since year 2001, Pakistan is part of the global efforts for containing terrorism. The issue of terrorism gained prominence as the United Nations took up the issue and passed resolution calling upon the states to cooperate for controlling terrorism. Pakistan has been cooperating with the international community for control of terrorism because Pakistan itself has been victim of terrorism. This concludes our discussion of the basic features and highlights of foreign policy, which can be summed up as maintaining cordial, peaceful relations and resolution of problems through peaceful means. Thank you and Khuda Hafiz.